Hey everybody, and welcome to The Index. I'm your host, Alex Kehaya, and today I'm excited to be joined by my friend Vinny Lingham, co-founder and CEO of Rumi, the AI video conference company. Rumi.ai redefines meetings with AI synced notes and tasks, streamlining your workflow and ensuring productive action tracking. Now, I can speak from personal experience because I am a user and customer of Rumi, and the thing I love about AI is it gives you superpowers. And this is definitely an example of one of those products and tools that makes me feel superhuman. I'm like terrible at organizing notes and tracking projects and things like that. And I use Rumi to just do it for me. Like for this podcast, every stand up I do with my producer, we use Rumi for now, and it automatically organizes everything into task lists, and then I can use that to remind myself next week, like what did we hit? Did we accomplish all the things we were supposed to do? Are our projects on track? And it kind of all happens on autopilot using AI that way. Like we literally use our stand up and the output of Rumi to make that happen. So that's my little plug for Rumi. I love the product. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Alex. Great to hear you using Rumi, and thanks for being a power user.
Yeah.
And it's really great. It's great to speak to people who actually use it because they love it. Because like I have lots of friends who will use it, and they'll try it out, and it's cool. But like you've gone the next step. You've like actually put it into your company, and you're seeing like productive benefits out of it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I need to. I haven't been using the integrations yet for Asana or like Trello or anything like that yet, but that's sort of my next step is to do those integrations. Right now, I'm just sort of looking at the raw output and then using that as sort of a checklist. But
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much that's possible with it. Like so many people I work with are so good about organizing all their notes and tracking all that stuff and keeping it in Notion and putting it into tasks and then checking those boxes. And that's just not my strength. Like I'm the kid that has like multiple learning differences. I'm ADD. I have dysgraphia, which is like dyslexia for writing, and AI makes me feel like it like solves that really big pain point for me with Rumi. This is like, I mean, that's kind of personal. Like I actually don't tell people a lot about that stuff, but it's a certain part of thing, like an area where I'm weak at things that I can now be strong with and have confidence because of the product. And it's one of the main things that I use AI for, period. Right? Like and so anyway, I'm a huge fan of what you're trying to do with it. At least for my niche of demographic, which there are probably lots of people like me that have the same problems. And I'm excited to hear where it's going to go. So thanks for coming on. And before we get to like that story though, just really briefly, because I know you can guys, if you're listening to this, you can go find like 1,000 interviews with Vinny that he's done in the past. But just really briefly, like who are you and what's your background?
Sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think I always identify as an entrepreneur first and investor second, because that's how I started. I started building companies. I've built over 100, over half a dozen companies. I've made hundreds of investments in startups. And when I say hundreds, I mean like 200 and something plus already. So a lot of experience as an investor, but it's always from the landscape that like I was a founder first and foremost, and I still am, and I still build businesses, and that's what I do. And obviously, I've made money, so I invested in other companies, and I'm pretty good at investing too. In fact, I tell people I'm probably better at investing than being an entrepreneur, but I love being an entrepreneur more than I love being an investor. So, I do what I love, and I try and help other founders out, which is, I take a very founder friendly approach to investing, because I know how hard it is to work with shitty investors who've never actually run a startup before, and they go and get an MBA or whatever at some Ivy League school, get a job at a big VC, think they're like super smart, but they've never actually done it, right? It's all like looking from the outside in, going, "Oh, that looks easy," or like an over intellectualize running a startup. And the funny thing is, I've seen a lot of those guys, and I use guys, without gender bias in any way. A lot of people, and they leave the sort of the VC world that they're in, and they want to go start their own company now because they've seen it all, and then they struggle, and they come back and they say, Vinny, I've had a ton of former VCs turned entrepreneurs come back to me saying, man, I didn't know how hard this is, and it looks easy being a VC, and when you're on the other side, things are different, and they come back humbled,
Yeah.
when they come ask for advice, and the tables have turned, and they're like, well, I'd like for you to invest, but I'd also like you to help me out, John. These are the things I'm struggling with. And they don't have the operational experience, but they've spent years watching others do it. And it's very different when you're in the trenches doing it yourself and having to make those tough decisions versus going fresh out of school and being a VC. So I've always taken the approach that I'm a founder, and if you take money from me as an investor, it's because it's a founder helping a founder, not an investor investing in a founder.
Yeah, and I mean, I can obviously speak to that from personal experience because you invested in my last company, Olaplex, which failed. Like we there's no like sugarcoating it. We failed as a company, and you were you were the only person on my cap table with actual founder experience that was like a professional investor in the company. And of all the investors, you were the one that like when I sent you a text at I could send you a text at like 8 o'clock at night, and I'd be so surprised you called me like immediately. I was like, how is he doing this? I don't know how you have the bandwidth to make that happen, but I really, really appreciated it. And we've had this conversation before, but I think it's worth people hearing like actual testimonial, like this is true. There are very few people who invest professionally who also have been founders and invest from that perspective. I think it's invaluable. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. No, no,
So
no worries. Thank you. Yeah, I always I kind of joked if I ever started a company, I would just call it co-founder capital. It's a VC fund. Like that's one of the ideas names I played around with, because that's what it is. I think it's like it's being like a co-founder as opposed to an investor. And so when my co-founder is messaging me at any time of the night, morning, I'm up. Like, what do you need, right? So it's the same principle.
yeah. That I think that's a really important perspective. And so like that kind of leads me to this like, I'm amazed that you have that many investments, 200 investments, and you're building Rumi. Like you don't have to scratch that itch anymore. You've
Mm.
made more than enough money to just like kick back and chill. Why are you still here doing this? It's the hardest thing ever. It's still and just for people listening, just because he has money doesn't make it any less hard. It's still fucking hard. Maybe it's a little less
It's
stressful, but it's
it's
still
fun.
fucking hard. Why are you doing this?
I think it's my last foray. I'll be honest, as an
Yeah,
operator, I just turned 45 about a week ago, 2 weeks ago,
congratulations.
and thank you.
Happy
And
birthday.
it's kind of my last gig,
Yeah.
and I mean it in a like I want I it's not like I have anything to prove, but I want to try one more thing. And
Hmm.
I've been building Rumi now for 4 years. And within the next year or so, year or two, if I can't get it to a good revenue number and scale it, then you know, uh, it's it's a failure, and that's fine. It's I've had successes, I've had failures. I'm happy to give it a shot, but I wanted to try one more time and try and build something interesting. And I happened to stumble into AI, building it, which I always happen to find some sort of interesting new direction to take things, and like whether I was going to Bitcoin or whatever. Before that, I did search, I did SaaS, and I think the sort of rising tide right now is AI. So rumi.ai it's an AI play. I think if I can ride this out and build something interesting, personally, a lot of satisfaction out of that. But it's definitely my last sort of foray, because it is hard. I've raised $5 million externally, and then I put in a couple $1 million myself into the company. So I'm doing it for my own personal edification versus, like I said, I don't have anything to prove, but I want to build something cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like you can't turn off being an entrepreneur. Like that's how I look at it, right? You either are or you just aren't. It's impossible to turn off. You're hardwired. I even tried early in my career when I just had my daughter. She was 6 months old, and I was barely making it, right? Like, I was like consulting. I had this little SaaS business I had just started, and it was making like 10,000 a month. I literally wrote the whole version, Vinny, myself, and I'm not a software developer, but I like figured out how to build this like Rails app, and I was like, I have to get a job. I like started trying to apply places because I needed healthcare because I had a family and I needed to like provide. And I kept bombing the interviews. And like, this is not me. I was like, what is going on? And so I went to a mentor of mine, this guy who named Klaus Schauser, who started Appfolio up in Santa Barbara. And he recommended that I read this book called Life Launch. And like, to make a long story short, I realized I just wasn't accepting who I was. And I just had to accept it. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. This is what I have to do with my life, and I just have to accept it's going to hurt for a while. And I found a way, and I think that's what we all do. You just don't give up. You stay in the game, and you win some, you lose some, but you keep playing. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that this is kind of like maybe the last one you're going to build. But I mean, after that, are you just gonna you think you'll just invest to keep kind of scratching that itch and stay connected, or what are you thinking you'll do?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, I think for now, my mission is Rumi and building something of value there. People like yourself are using. We've got users, we've got paying customers now. It's growing. We're adding new users all the time. And for me, it's just like I don't have an endpoint right now. I'm just going to build this thing for as long as I can. And then also I'm not the best at scaling companies in terms of I'm a good early stage guy. One,
Hmm.
two, my biggest 100 people. But if this becomes a 1,000 person company, I'm not your guy, right? So then I'll be chairman or whatever. I get a
Yep.
CEO to run it. Even at a smaller scale size, I mean, I'm not the best operations person, and I have good people around me to do that. So I have a fractional CFO, COO. Excuse me. I bring in people to help build scale businesses, but I think for now it's going to be really focused on building the product, building the team, the core team, making sure it's an amazing product, making sure there's a revenue curve, there's a growth curve, and then either stepping back and handing over, or just or just growing it organically, and then after that, just doing things which I think is interesting and fun. Like I've gotten into wine recently, so I'm a, you've had wine with me before, so I
Really
have
good
I have
wine.
I've developed a taste for good wine.
Yeah.
I've started flying recently, so I've got I'm trying to get my pilot's license.
Oh, cool.
It- these things take time, right? So like that's a couple hundred hours I'm going to dedicate in the next year or two, um, and then after that, who knows, right? So
Do
I
you know
think just
that? Do you know the Eversteak guys? Sergey from Eversteak, the founder of Eversteak.
no, I might have met him once, I think.
He lives in Florida, but he's a pilot. You guys should talk. He's
Okay,
like really into flying. You'll hit it off on that. So
that's great.
who's the target customer for Rumi right now? Where like what are your who should be using this service?
Anyone who doesn't like taking notes, that's the easy one, right? Because I hate taking notes. I don't take notes in meetings, and we're building the product. I would say for me, largely initially, it's like I don't want to take notes. I want all the notes to be there. I want to be able to go into my meeting memory and typing things like, what is that book Alex told me about last month, and then it pulls it out of your conversations. So having this like memory of all the meetings you have. Like, how many times have you been in a meeting where, I mean, think about this: if every meeting was run through your AI, and and let's say I said to you, "Hey, Alex, do you have a friend who does flying, right?" And you tell me about this now, and in like 3 months' time, I can't remember what his name was, or or some detail about him. I can type it in; it'll go and find that information, and pull it out. Alex told you about the co-founder of Everstake, and you should, and this is the details. Or even, if another good example is you might tell me you're looking for someone. You say, "Hey, you know a great graphic designer?" And I'll be like, "No, I don't really know." And then in like a month's time, someone tells me about, "Hey, my friend's this graphic designer who's looking for a job. Do you know anyone who's looking to hire?" And mention I can't remember who said that. I can either ask the AI, or the AI could tell me, on the screen notification. Don't forget, Alex knows a good graphic designer based on listening to the conversation. So I think the future is having this personal AI that sits in every single one of your video conferencing meetings, and potentially even in-person meetings in the future, listens to it, becomes intelligent enough to help you guide your conversation, your knowledge base, and help connect people as well. So for me, that's the real power here. We're trying to build a product that it becomes effectively like a personal assistant for every minute of the day for you.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, on the personal assistant side of things, it's not just like the note taking, but in the recall of what happened or who you talked to, but also the project management. Like it literally can do, it should in theory be able to do, I don't know, is it 80% of what a project management person would do to like create timelines and Gantt charts and track things and show you how much progress you've made. And actually, you're making me think, I had a Slack message that I found this morning that I had like lost for like a week that, was somebody trying to set a meeting with me and it just got buried because you have 1,000 messages coming in. And you could connect those with meeting notes and like it should know the context of who that is in the Slack message and be like, hey, this is a task you needed to complete that's related to this other thing and this as part of this general project that you're involved in. You know, did you mean to respond to this task? It can do all those things. So I could see Rumi becoming even bigger than just meeting notes. It's actually can
Well,
be like,
exactly. We see that. We absolutely see that. This is where we're going. It's not just meeting notes, but you ask the question, who should be using it now? People who don't want to keep notes for
yeah,
meetings. You want to have all the AI, and then you want to plug it into third-party systems. So we've got Monday.com, we've got ClickUp, we've got Asana, we've got Linear. We're bringing in a bunch of other integrations. So, Slack as well is already there. So you can just push stuff into Slack. You can push it to Teams, groups, channels you're in, whatever. And then it becomes more and more intelligent over time. So think of this as like we're in phase one right now. We're just capturing all the meeting information and we're giving you, sort of right now you have to click and insert things and send it in to different places. But we're summarizing it for you. We're giving you these summaries and notes, or we give you minutes at the end of each meeting. But over time, you're starting to build a knowledge base of every conversation you've ever had. And if you can build a knowledge base, I wish I could get a knowledge base of every meeting I've had since COVID on video. Like, can you imagine how powerful that would be if I could search every meeting? We're talking hundreds and maybe thousands of meetings since then on video. I can't remember what I said in each meeting. I can't remember what the gist of it was. Imagine there's an AI that's listening to every single meeting, reminding you, telling you. You can type in the chat bot and ask a question. It'll remind you. It'll tell you. You can even say things like, we're going to have an audio version where you go, "Hey Rumi, remind me to follow up with Alex next week on the graphic designer or on the Eversec founder," and it'll just create the reminder in your calendar or your to-do list, knowing based on that. So you'll have the audio side of it as well. So I think this becomes very powerful, and that's what I'm busy building. And I think this is really cool and interesting. And the more people that use it, the better the product becomes. As you know, you're giving us feedback all the time. My team's loving it. We're adding features. And so even though today it may seem like a pretty, simple product. And by the way, like, we've been doing this longer than Zoom in terms of AI video combination. They just released their product like a few months ago. We've been doing it longer than that.
I don't really
And the
trust
other
Zoom
players,
for what it's worth. That's honestly that's why I use you guys instead of Zoom, because Zoom does have some of the. I've not even tested those features because I
yeah.
just don't trust them.
Well,
Uh,
we have an off the record button. So
yeah,
when you're having a conversation, if you don't want to have it on the record, you just click a button. It pauses the AI. It pauses the video recording. Zoom doesn't have that feature, for example. So it's either the whole call is recorded or the whole call is not recorded, as an example. But we care about
you can
privacy.
just
So
toggle it on and off whenever you want. I actually used that feature the other day. We were like in the middle of doing this project planning, and then I wanted to talk about something sensitive, and I pressed the button, and I was like, okay, so here's the other thing I didn't want to have like on the record that's private information. We don't want to put this in writing or whatever it is. Um,
exactly. I mean, we built it for reasons like that. Actually, shout out to Ashton Kutcher, who, it was his idea. It was I was having a conversation with him on Rumi, and he said that like that was early on, like maybe a year ago, because he invested in Gift and Civic, my previous companies as well. So I've known him for a while, and he gave me some really great feedback, and that's become a really good feature. But you know, for me, it's all about rapid feature development right now. The roadmap will be what it will be. We're gonna get user feedback. We're keeping it really cheap right now, so it's cheaper than buying Zoom
it's a
plus
no-brainer. It's an
some
absolute
other. Yeah.
no-brainer. I mean, I think
So
I was like one of the first paying customers because I like logged in to use it, and the
you're number
publican,
two.
yeah, I was like number two emoji, and I was like, holy shit, this is cheap. I bought it, and I'm like, it's gonna get more expensive. I'm buying this now.
Yeah, it's cheaper than because with Zoom you can obviously get upgrades and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's cheaper than Zoom by itself, and you can buy. There's lots of other note taking apps out there, but then you have to have Zoom, so you can always pay double. And we're trying to make it. We're the only platform out there that has all this vertically integrated. So we've got the note taking with integrations. We've got the video all in one platform. Whereas when we look at Zoom, they got all these plugins. You have to pay for the plugin separately. And I'm kind of concerned because, like, if I'm a plugin sitting on top of Zoom and Zoom's learning for what I'm doing, and then they building their own competitor to me, you don't control the user. You don't have you don't control the ecosystem. So I've got some skepticism about the how our competitors who just sit on top of Zoom are gonna be competitive with Zoom and giving away all that data as well. It's a little difficult. So anyway, we're just trying to build a cool product for a small group of people. If you're listening to this, and you want to sign up. Please give it a try. We have a free trial. We welcome all the feedback. And the nice thing about being an early user of a new product is you get to choose and tell us and give us feedback and help us build and send it in the right direction.
when Notion integration.
That's coming. That's actually coming. And I think my team will listen to this. So when they listen to it, they're going to be like, because I've asked for it as well. It's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. All
We're,
right.
we're, we're trying to balance priorities right now, but
Yeah,
that's
I
one of
know.
them.
So here's another thing I was curious about. So you and I are both really big fans of decentralized infrastructure, and I have become more and more over the years obsessed with the physical infrastructure that powers the internet. So things like Filecoin, things like Solana, things like Render and a cache, right? And more, the intersection of decentralized infrastructure and DePIN is the intersection is getting stronger between that and AI. And so I wonder, like, as a company, as somebody building a company that leverages AI, I'm assuming you guys are mostly doing inference and not training, but maybe you are doing a bunch of training as well.
Yeah.
How do you view that using that infrastructure for your company? Like one of the biggest, like I think you guys are on AWS right now, if I remember from talking to one of your people. I can't remember exactly, but or like there's a benefit in that these networks are really robust and cost effective. They're decentralized, but there's still like a gap, I think, in privacy that needs to be solved before you can adopt it with like user data, for example. But I just want to like, hear your perspective on this. Like, just generally, will Rumi be able to use, will you be able to use like decentralized infrastructure to power parts of Rumi in the future? Why would you do that? Just in just general, what are your thoughts? Because I think that that's like if the roomies of the world start using decent, then there'll be a lot of adoption. I think that we haven't crossed that yet. Like right now, it's mostly degens. I feel like hobbyists doing those kinds of things.
So actually, Protocol Labs invested in a seed round with us. So we are, we're definitely looking at storage as part of
Mm,
where we have to go decentralized because it's just cheaper as well. So if we're going to be
yep,
storing a lot of data, you want it decentralized, you want it secure, you don't want it in any sort of data center that can shut it down. So that's coming, and we definitely see a future for decentralized storage, especially with like video. Video is expensive to store, at scale anyway, and so that's one. Render doesn't. I mean, Render may help us in some ways, but I'm not too sure right now because we don't really do much generative AI for like graphics and stuff. Uh, and Solana, like, there's a world where we have payments built into video conferencing where you could have like shopping channels and stuff like that. So there are some things there. I think for the most part, video is reasonably centralized, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world, and there are things like live peer and other things we're looking at, but um, as a startup trying to figure out product market fit, the guts of it don't matter as much as actually figuring out how people are going to use the actual product.
100% agree.
So when it comes to the inference, that's where we could use render, I guess. We don't right now. Lots of reasons Render's not ready for that just yet for what we're doing, and we are testing out different models. We are testing out training smaller
Mm,
data set models, smaller parameter models, making more focused, writing our own models. I would say right now we're experimenting with with really cool tech and ideas. We don't have it fully nailed down yet, but it's really good, as you know.
yeah,
And so we're testing. In the next 12 months, we'll have a better sense of which direction we're going to go. And I think we're all waiting for ChatGPT 5 to come out and see what that looks like. Because the advancements right now, every 6 to 9 months, are going to be quite dramatic.
they're insane.
And so, like, as a startup, I'd rather focus on building interfaces, integrations, and just like, for anyone listening, let me explain how the way we think about it. Right, we have a meeting for an hour. There's a transcript. That transcript is being run through an AI in real time. After meeting's done, if we upgrade that AI to the next version from 4 to 4.5 to 5 to 7 to 10 in a couple of years, that same meeting transcript has different contextual meaning as the AI gets better. So we can upgrade the AI, um, and go back and redo those notes, and the new AI can have a better take on what those notes were as AI improves. So we care more about capturing the transcripts, enabling sort of multilingual capabilities. So we're going to enable you to speak. You can speak English, and if I want to read in Spanish, have Spanish live subtitles. So you can have these team meetings with people
That
of
is
different languages,
crazy.
and that's like all coming in the next few months, like in this quarter, maybe the next month or two. So we have a lot of these things we're focusing on. So we're focusing on getting in data, getting in text, and then the beauty part is as the LLMs improve and the industry sort of advances, we can just plug them in, and we can also just go back and redo it. So we can recursively go and fix notes that were taken, or fix the AI's insights into a meeting. Maybe it got something wrong, and then when you run it through the new version, it gets it right. And we can do that retrospectively, or retroactively rather. So that's those are the things we're looking at. We don't want to, as much as we're focusing on making sure this is the best AI experience, we also realize that AI will improve over time, but the conversation would not have changed
Hmm.
because And that's why the transcription services and multilingual transcription is so important.
Well, what'd be, yeah, this kind of thing you used to think is like futurism, but it's actually like 6 months from now is what I'm hearing. You could actually do that
Yeah.
with audio too, like speech to text and vice versa. That AI is getting really good as well. And so for the like you could be speaking Spanish to me and I'm hearing English.
Yes.
Like you could
That's
do
that's
that in
going
the
to happen.
meeting too, not just reading it, but actually hearing the live translation, and it could get it right. I mean, I've never had this experience looking at technology when I was looking at Sora, which OpenAI launched, the generative video generator like thing. This is the first time I've looked at anything and been kind of scared. Like you're like watching that and you're like, this is actually a bit terrifying that it's real and like what it can do. Um, do you think there are risks? I mean, am I crazy to be like a little bit afraid, of the capabilities that are coming out of that?
I mean, I think it depends depends what you're using it for. To be frank, there's no way that governments are going to use this sort of system where you're negotiating nuclear arms treaties.
Yeah, yeah,
You think- can you imagine like having a conversation with Putin and he said what?
yeah,
So I don't think we have this. But like you and I having a conversation about some arbitrary random thing like we're importing a Bitcoin mining card from Mexico to California, and like that's not going to be mission critical, and as long as the terms are fine, like you sign the paperwork, it's fine. It's not a a globally sensitive matter.
So I keep going back to the hardware because this is the thing that nobody really thinks about, but it's what powers the internet and is the physical infrastructure, right? All these data centers, all the GPUs, and we just saw Nvidia's earnings like through the roof again. And I just want to bring up two things here. One, you were talking about on Twitter, I think yesterday about this, about Nvidia's earnings, and if in governments, I think I can't, I'm not exactly sure what you were referring to, but governments restricting where Nvidia can sell their chips.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that?
Nvidia. Yeah, Nvidia. I think part of the notes that came out of the earnings call yesterday and earnings release was that they're going to get restrictions, and I think the UK and a few others are restricting where they can sell it to. Um, so there's a chip shortage worldwide.
Yeah,
So governments don't want like it going to competitive governments. And now all that's going to happen is that the crypto world is going to. This is why I think Render is such a good play right now because you can, as the demand grows, you can just plug in, Apple GPU chips and RTX 3090s and 4090s, whatever, into a network and just share the resources. And you don't have to worry about shortages because now the utilization goes up. So that's why I think Render is like my number one pick for the year. I think that was at like $3 or $4 start of the year. I think we're in 20, 30 plus. Who knows?
wow.
Because I think decentralized compute is the way to go. Now, the other products out there, and people ask like, what about Akash? What about this? What about that? I'm like, okay, out of all these guys out there, and I'm not, like whether it's Tao or whatever else, good, good for them. Everyone's doing something cool. They're all trying to figure it out. Who's the only CEO going to GDC for Nvidia next month to speak about this stuff? The only CEO in the crypto space who's been invited to go to Nvidia's global developer conference is Jules Urbach from Otoy and Render.
Yeah,
Like, there's a reason for this.
yeah. That's a good point.
It's validated.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, this does kind of connect with the thing about Sam Altman, where he's like saying we need $7 trillion. He wants to raise $7 trillion for chip manufacturing. And um, one of my thoughts about that, and you and I kind of talked about this over the beginning of the show, is that's like a ridiculous number, but also like something I've become very interested in since like really 2020 was chip manufacturing because there is a chip shortage and there's one place in the world where the chips are really produced. It's Taiwan, which is at threat of war with China at like any time. So we need to figure out a better way to get supply of these chips and then deploy those assets and hardware all over the world. And I wonder, I wonder if the things we're seeing in DePIN, where like you're taking new ways of forming capital and then getting using that to deploy hardware. Like this is what we're happening. It's like capital formation in crypto and then incentives to deploy hardware. I wonder if we'll see a future where the whole stack, like the whole supply chain, uses this new method of capital formation and incentivization. I think the big challenge is that the technology for making chips is so like top secret and hard to make that it'd be hard to decentralize that. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, Are we gonna get to a place where we just totally disrupt the whole supply chain because of
No, it's
decentralized
going to come.
networks?
I mean, within 3 to 5 years, Nvidia is going to have major competition from other players other than Apple. I mean, Amazon's already building a chip. I think Google's building. They're all building chips. The problem is they don't have the fabs, and that's going to
Hmm.
take years to put up. So Nvidia's got a clear run for the next 3 years before anyone can really challenge them, with the exception of Apple. But Apple is a closed ecosystem, so I think it depends on how the compute gets distributed, maybe through Render or whatever. Um, Ionet, Akash, or whatever, like things can change. Um, I would say that for now, my bet is that Nvidia's got a clear run for the next 3 years at least, and then maybe after things change.
So your top picks render. What else are you thinking about for this year? What's exciting?
Um, for this year, um, I mean, I'm obviously a big Solana fan. I think Solana can go up to who knows, 300, 500. It all depends what happens with Bitcoin. Like we're at the BS in crypto. We're at the BS of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is strong. Crypto is strong. Governments, I think, have realized they can't stop Bitcoin. So then, by proxy, they don't think they can stop crypto either. So I think if Bitcoin goes from 52 to 65 to 100, the whole market's going to raise. But I just want to see Bitcoin maintain a dominance of more than 50%, and I think we're in a good place. When Bitcoin's dominance goes down to like low 40s, 30s, we're in bubble phase. So I always look at Bitcoin dominance as the bubble indicator. Right now we're at 53% or something. We're good. Keep going. When it starts going down below 45, if Bitcoin dominance goes down below 45, I'm probably going to take like at least half my chips off the table. And if it goes in the 30s, I'm out. So watch Bitcoin. That's how I play it.
I will keep an eye on Bitcoin. I will definitely use the same the same strategy. Not financial advice, do your own research on this show. Um, so yeah, I mean, with Rumi, like, what's coming out in the next like 3 months? What's the time you were talking about product priorities being like what they are? What things should users be looking for as far as like you mentioned Notion, but like what else do you have coming down the pipe?
Um, we've got chat, so we don't have the chat feature in yet. It wasn't one of the ones we didn't do. That's coming in soon. Um, I think more integrations. And honestly, just a lot of polishing and bug fixing, and better meeting memory tools. So being able to go back and look at your old meeting notes, memory minutes, that sort of thing. So that's a big focus for the next couple of months. And that's why the more people we have, if you're helping us and you like the product and you're submitting bug reports and giving us feedback, you're just gonna help us make a better product for you. And we know we can't win this market by being the most expensive product, so we're gonna be the cheapest probably for the most part, right? Enterprise, I mean, we have to look at the cost, but I don't think we will be beaten on price because we are a small team. We have low overhead. We don't have huge budgets for anything, and we have to be very economical. And we're not going to overcharge for this. And we actually want a global audience, so we know that 1995 a month in the US is expensive for someone living in maybe South Africa or in
Mm.
you know Asia. So we're trying to find the right price points for different countries where we just basically go in there and give these guys great value for money. And oh, philosophically, as a company, we do want to be more like Apple, in the sense that we want the tools. We don't have plugins. We don't have third-party tools. We build everything natively into the platform. So we don't have this notion of having Zoom and a marketplace and whatever else. We're about building a tool that has all the tools you need built into it seamlessly, and you don't have to go pay for all these separate add-ons. Maybe there's an upgrade fee for different things, but like very minor. Whereas with Zoom, you can quickly be spending hundreds of bucks a month for all the different tools and add-ons.
Yeah, that makes me think of like, what do you think about data and data sovereignty in this case? Like when users are the ones like creating all these notes. I was just thinking, I was reading some of the news about Reddit and how they got paid like $16 million by some AI company to like use all their data. And I heard they might be like, did they IPO already, or they might be IPOing, and they're going to give like users IPO shares, like the top users and stuff like that. Kind of sounds like a crypto airdrop to me, which is funny. But what do you think about the data issue? Because that's like a super valuable thing that users are kind of creating with you. I don't know how you think about that.
Um, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's so many variables out there. Like, sorry, I'm just like
Okay.
losing my. I lost my train of thought there for a second. This is you editing this right afterwards.
Yeah. We can
Yeah,
edit this
you
out.
cut that
Yeah,
out. Sorry,
yeah.
can you just repeat
Yeah,
that, please?
the question is just about data, like data sovereignty, and like the like Reddit's basically selling their
Oh yeah,
users'
yeah.
data for $60 million, and they're using it to train AI, and it's super valuable. And like honestly, me as a user of Rumi, I don't care. I just like that the product works great. Like I don't really care. But I was kind of wondering what you thought about it, as far as like how other companies choose to use data versus how like Rumi's going to be using it.
We're going to use Rumi's data for your purposes and to train the model to improve it, and you can opt out of it. So I think Zoom, when they launched their AI model, they got hauled over the coals because they were just saying we basically own your data, we can do what we want with it, and you can't opt out.
I remember that. I
And
think I texted you about that. I was like, dude, this is
yeah,
huge. It's
it's
a
huge
big
for us.
differentiator. Yeah, massive. Like they gave it unforced error. Talk about a massive company making
Yeah,
unforced error. I immediately was like, can
exactly.
I use nothing but Rumi for all of my calls now? Because they're listening to me.
So exactly. We allow you to do that. So you can opt out of the data for the bigger model or for yourself. You can choose. So privacy levels are important to us. We're not targeting big corporates right now. So we don't have any big guys who need to use our platform just yet. We are just focusing on building the best product for small teams to use. So, 1 to 5, maybe 10 people in a company using Rumi every day. Like, and we can sort of contain your data. We don't need to use your data for this sort of stuff. I mean, Zoom's got so much data coming into their platform; they need to use it to train models. We don't. We're just trying to build better products for the existing users and um, keeping it private. I mean, like I'm a privacy guy. My previous company was a identity and personal information privacy company, Civic. So I have that sort of natural bent to privacy, and I'm in crypto, so I care a lot about privacy.
So we're getting towards the top of the show here, and I always ask the same question. But what have I not asked you that I should have asked or that you wanted to talk about?
um, Well, thanks for first of all for having the conversation on Rumi. It's great to sort of share some of the things we're thinking about there. Um, maybe my thoughts on this next cycle, where we're going to go with Bitcoin and whatever else. So I'll share some of those thoughts. So I think I think Bitcoin is going to potentially go to all-time highs, but I think there's a non-zero chance we do have a triple top. In other words, we don't break over the 70 mark again, and then we go back in the bear cycle, largely due to I think macro reasons. I think the halving is kind of overplayed out because like the real impact on the supply isn't that much. I think there's a looming macro bubble bust situation. Companies have to keep making earnings and growing in order for the government to hit their receipts. The US deficit's very, very high right now. It's 35 trillion, running 2 to 3 trillion a year in debt. And there's no one to pick it up slack-wise. So let's see what happens. I would be conservative and hey, if Bitcoin goes to 100K or 120K, it's probably best that people start taking chips off the table at that level. Don't hold out for $1 million Bitcoin or $200,000 Bitcoin. It's probably not going to happen. Maybe keep a small amount in the outside chance, but like let's be smart about this. And every single bubble bust cycle, we always see a run up, we always see a bubble, and then we always see a bust and years of pain afterwards. And I always say the bigger the party, the bigger the hangover.
Yeah.
And we've seen these parties and we've seen these big hangovers. So if like when you have life changing money sitting in crypto, um, you know, consider getting some or most of it out, and then just not being greedy. Like being greedy is the one thing that's going to undo a lot of people this cycle, and especially people who didn't see it last cycle.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's great advice to wrap on, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, it's great to be here.